What's up, my freedom-loving friend? President 81 million votes just gave a speech last night. Basically, the title of the speech is Extremist Threat to Democracy. We got to get into it. I mean, this guy sets the bar high on gaslighting. And from my point of view, his speech that someone else wrote for him last night that he did a pretty good job reading, man, he exceeds his normal gaslighting. We'll get into some details. The speech is like 23 minutes long, and because it's Biden, that feels like about 5 hours. So we'll fast forward, hit the highlights of it. The gist of his whole thing is his overarching gaslighting message is, we have to save our democracy. Who's destroying it? Me? Yeah. We have to Freudian slip as I'm playing Biden. We have to destroy our democracy. This whole thing is we have to save our democracy. We need unity. And he couldn't have been more divisive while the alleged narrative of the speech is all about unity. He spent 95% of the time calling out people who support Trump, which is called Republicans, calling them existential threats to democracy, calling them extremists. Let's get into it. So, by the way, I love how it starts off. Jill, welcome to the stage. Try not to let him get lost. You hear the roar of the crowd? How ominous is that? Let's just take another quick look. They're in the deep, dark shadows, and now emerging from the shadows. How symbolic, not even symbolic, how literal is that relative to him and his people and how they operate? People love me. She probably just cringed. Watch this.
My fellow Americans, please, if you have a seat.
Sounds super healthy, bro. How creepy is this setting? Could we say it looks demonic? Could we say it looks evil? Now, whoever runs these things, they don't do things by accident. They have a deep psychological knowledge of, like, this color represents this, and they tell politicians, don't clench your fists, like put the thumb on top, otherwise people feel threatened. So this color scheme, as creepy as it is, as demonic as it looks, wasn't done by accident. What's their purpose? I don't know. Is it conditioning to demonic ways? Like, that sounds insane when I say that. But they're the ones that did it.
Thank you. I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
One thing I do want to point out before we get back to his riveting coughing, you can see him better before they turn the demonic lighting features on. But you'll see this is a Marine and this is a Marine. Now, from what I understand, when presidents give normal speeches, they don't have the military behind them. But when they're giving them a wartime speech about the enemy, they'll have military soldiers behind them to symbolize, here's the force we will use against our enemy. So it's very unusual that the president would have military presence behind him, symbolizing, here's the force we can and will use. Because you have to say, well, like, he's not talking about Russia. He's not talking about China. So who's the enemy? The fact that he spends 95% of the speech talking about Trump and Trump supporters. Only 75 million people voted for Trump in the last election. Maybe more. So is that what the symbolic representation, the message is supposed to be here? I don't know. But if it is, there couldn't be much more tyrannical. Speaking of tyrannical, Biden, who loves to call Trump supporters fascists, loves to call anybody who's not on his tyrannical team fascist. Take a look at the set. Cool, red, black, creepy. Then you take a look at the Antifa logo. It's like, cool. This speech is sponsored by Antifa. Good for the change up. At least it's not sponsored by Pfizer. Antifa, ladies and gentlemen. Also can't help but point out, if you've seen the movie V for Vendetta, you realize it's one of those prophetic movies, much like George Orwell's 1984. And you look at here the Chancellor, who's basically the tyrant villain of the movie, trying to control everybody through authoritarian ways. Here he is at his podium. Look familiar? No. Guys, quit making this so obvious. Just soft colors, nice light, let people feel good.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
There he goes right into it. Bro, you've been in office for 2 years. You and CNN without Trump, you're like the Joker without Batman. So a speech about unity, and now he has to lean in hard against Trump. How scared are these people of Donald Trump? He's someone who they can't control. The biggest threat to their whole agenda is someone who they can't control becoming president again. And by the way, like time for the gaslighting update, saying Donald Trump's supporters are the biggest threat to the Republic. Cool, Banana Republic Joe. You just use the FBI to raid President Trump. You've had this witch hunt January 6th trial. You had 4 years of the Russia collusion hoax. You've obliterated the First Amendment. Your White House tells Facebook what to censor. Not to mention, it was recently announced Biden has partnered with TikTok, which is run by the Chinese Communist Party, to uphold the election narratives and protect online users on TikTok from false midterm election narratives. What a great idea to uphold our democracy. Yeah, the only thing we can do to do that is to enlist the help of democracy-destroying communists to censor democratic free speech of Americans so that we can influence a democratic election. But Trump wears a red hat.
Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology.
Extreme ideology? You mean the Constitution? Yeah, I like how he says, like, not every Republican is an extreme Trump supporter. Oh, like Liz Cheney? Or the people have sold out to you, bro? Well, yeah, not every Republican is a Donald Trump supporter, but this guy's version of that is suspect.
Not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America.
Apparently today it's black and red Antifa America.
And I believe it's my duty to level with you to...
Sounds like he's talking about his underwear. It's my duty. No, you can't change my shorts. It's my duty. I want to keep it. I made it myself.
MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election.
They look at evidence and raise questions based on evidence. Which, by the way, if you don't allow people to raise questions based on evidence, even if they raise questions based on frivolousness, that's more, shall I call it, authoritarian than, or at least as authoritarian as not having democratic elections. If you can't have democratic free speech that question election integrity, then you have no election integrity.
No right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
They promote authoritarian leaders. Says this non-authoritarian leader who uses the FBI and CIA to try to take down his political opponents. Yeah, we got to get those authoritarian leaders. They're the ones that aren't doing it. We've got to stop them from doing what I'm doing, because I don't want them doing it.
That are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
So for me, this is so much, I would call it propaganda baiting, because a lot of what he's saying right now, not like, hey, if you're a Republican, you're an extremist, not that, but a lot of what he's saying is inherently great. It's agreeable. We need the rule of law. Everybody needs the right to privacy, all these things. Like, you have to be, well, an authoritarian like him to not want those things. But have you ever heard the term actions speak louder than words? You know, his words, cool, agreeable. That's the gaslighting element. But his actions do the opposite. Taking away privacy, taking away people's rights, taking away people's constitutional rights, taking away people's rights to go to church. Remember his lockdown policies. Taking away people's right to free speech. Trying to take away gun rights. So those actions are in direct opposition to his words. So I can understand how someone who, like, not really aware of his actions, as obvious as they are, they hear these words and be like, yeah, I want those things. But then, of course, he creates a villain, much like they do in 1984. The main tyrant gets up there and he talks about this villain, riles the crowd against the villain. This villain doesn't exist in the movie, and this villain doesn't exist in real life as well. He's talking about Trump, but he's trying to project this villain propaganda onto him. So when you bait people in with, like, yeah, I want those things, like rights and privacy, why would I say no to that? And then you say, well, what stands in your way from those things that are your birthright is this villain. So you're like, well, I want those. That makes sense. I don't want anything that blocks it, so I have to be against that. But if you're not aware of his actions, you realize, you can buy into that, where his actions are actually exemplifying everything his words are saying he's against. I'm telling you the obvious here.
They look at the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th, brutally attacking law enforcement.
It's an outright lie. Based on my research, there were no law enforcement officers attacked. There apparently several died in the weeks following from things like strokes. Wonder where those came from. But their narrative was, oh, they died from a text. No. One died from a stroke, things like that. No relation to anything that happened at the Capitol. But he's still going on that rhetoric. It's a lie, based on what I know.
Not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy.
They did?
But they look at them as patriots, and they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections.
Which, by the way, I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I'll rewind it. They've got the FJB chant going. See if you can hear it.
2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections.
Actually, I don't know if they're saying let's, FJB or let's go Brandon. Well, wouldn't it be funny if Biden just at the mic, he hears him, he's like, yeah, let's go Brandon. Just like he did, what was it, last holiday season, Christmas time. The guy called him up while they were live on air, and he's like, okay, let's go Brandon. And Biden's like, yeah, let's go Brandon.
They tried everything last time to nullify the votes of 81 million people. This time, they're determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people. That's why respected conservatives like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Ludwig.
Federal Circuit Court Judge. He made that one word. That's pretty impressive.
Has called Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy.
Or potentially the ones that want to save the democracy. Choose your own adventure. Look at one party's actions. Look at his party's actions. And you have to be the judge. Who's trying to destroy the democracy? Who's trying to save it? Clearly one is trying to destroy the democracy. But you need to decide for yourself. We need to decide for ourselves who is the one trying to destroy it. Not let a potential candidate for destroying the democracy be the one to tell you who's trying to destroy the democracy. Because guess what? Let's say he was trying to destroy the democracy. Very far-fetched. Let's just say anyone was trying to destroy the democracy. The last thing they're going to come out and do is say, we're here to destroy the democracy. No, they would be there telling you they're trying to save the democracy, and they would create a scapegoat out of someone else. Someone who's trying to destroy a democracy is evil, and evil people aren't honest. Weird, I know. Something we have to consider. So he goes on, Trump's bad, destroying democracy, his supporters are extremists. He goes on for a while. Let's fast forward.
That's why tonight I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology.
And here's a good idea. Come together, unite for defending our democracy. Cool. If your message is about unity, why'd you just spend the last 10 minutes being as divisive as you could possibly be? Not against like a few people, but against half the country. Some would say more than half the country. That is incredibly divisive. You couldn't get more divisive. And then the gaslighting couldn't get any bigger because you're all about divisiveness. And then you like put the cherry on top after 10 minutes of divisiveness, unity. No, I said unity last. So all the divisive things I said, it's not really about that. I said unity last.
We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans. We must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy.
And now the new term, doubt this is going to be the last time you hear it, mainstream Republicans. And that distinction implies all Republicans who support Trump are extremist Republicans. They're basically domestic terrorists. You know those people, they release the list of domestic terrorist symbols, like basically anything patriotic is on it. They're not mainstream Republicans. We got, Liz Cheney is a mainstream Republican. Aren't really any others, so there's one. But we've got like 75 million extremists that are a threat to our democracy. Dude, I read some people are saying Biden is pretty cynical in this, and he is. But dude, I'm 10 times more cynical watching it. I'll own it.
We hear, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool.
I haven't heard anybody on the right talk about violence as a political tool. I've heard people on his team, I believe Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, some others around Roe versus Wade being overturned, doing their best. Like, dude, violence, we got to do whatever it takes. I'm paraphrasing. But aside from people who show up at Trump rallies paid by George Soros, who are there in Antifa gear, holding Proud Boy flags and white supremacist stuff, who are usually quite honestly looking like plants, I've never heard anybody on the right call for violence. I'm sure there's some, but I think he's saying those guys are doing what we're doing, but we don't want to see what we're doing. So look at those guys. The guys over there, peaceful, passionate patriots. Yeah, look how scary they are. They scare the living bejesus out of me. They're a threat to my agenda.
So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's great. And I think that's another strategic baiting. Like, say something super agreeable, it's kind of like, dude, how would I not agree with that? It's kind of like BLM, Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. Then support this organization. Well, it's different.
Throughout our history, America has often made the greatest progress coming out of some of our darkest moments, like you're hearing to that bullhorn.
You got the FJB chant going again. That's what unites America.
MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies, lies told for profit and power.
This segment of the speech is brought to you by Pfizer. Thank you, Joe. You've been our #1 salesman. Your commitment to profit and power has been very good for our business. But please take down those other people that are trying to get profit and power, whether they are or aren't actually trying that. And then let's take a look at the end of this boring thing.
I have no doubt, none.
Adderall kicked in.
This is who we will be. We just need to remember who we are. We are the United States of America, the United States of America. God bless you all. Democracy.
There's a little bit more you have to end that's even funnier than that, but how he just ends his speech and then, the narrative is supposed to be all about saving a democracy. So he ends it and then just says the word democracy again. It's like, dude, well, there wasn't context. Like, that didn't add to what you just said. It just made you feel like your speech was more convincing about what you're trying to accomplish with it. He's funny. But watch this. We're going to shake hands with the ghost again. Ah, no one was there. Where'd they go? Ah, do that. Ah, still not. Ah, there she is. That's a person that exists. Ooh, let's make out. Just like you're my daughter. So he can't get enough of himself. His speech is ended, grabs the mic again, tries to say something else, but of course his handlers are like, dude, as soon as he says the last word on the teleprompter, cut the feed. We can't take any risks. But Biden's like, dude, I've got a good idea. People are going to love this. Let me grab the mic. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to let anybody hear your good idea, Joe. And then watch how ominous this is again. They walk off into the shadows. Deep and dark. So that's the deal. I think it's worth noting most major networks did not air this, which is very unusual. Usually if a president gives a presidential address, first off, usually it's kind of presidential, but if they give a presidential address in the evening, normally it airs on all the networks. But most of the networks, Fox definitely didn't air it. I believe ABC, NBC did not. I don't think CBS did. So most of them didn't, which is hilarious. These networks are pretty much all propagandists, but apparently they're even like, bro, you're so bad for our ratings. Like, we got to just show these crappy shows because they're way better than what your crappy speech is going to be. Like, people don't want to watch you. They don't want to listen to you, which is comical for me, at least. So with that said, that is Biden's recent speech from Philadelphia yesterday, where his facade of a message was all about unity and saving our democracy. The reality of the message that I got was it's all about division and trying to polarize the country more, frame Republicans as extremists, and certainly frame people who are going to vote for Donald Trump as extremists. What are they setting up for? What might they be doing? Are they just trying to convince more people to come over to their side? Or is this a play in the long game where they're setting up the narrative of like, these people are really extremists. So what's their move in 4 months? Well, you know what we have to do with extremists. Those 87,000 new IRS agents that we hired that are authorized to use deadly force, who have 5 million rounds of ammunition. Come on. We got to audit the extremists, get them out of their homes, protect people, for crying out loud, social distance from the extremists. I don't know. Is that what they're setting up for? Midterm elections are coming up. They're very scared right now. Obviously, they couldn't be doing more to take down Trump. They couldn't be less effective as well. So What are they posturing for? Those are the big questions. I got more questions than answered, but tell me what you think about not only Biden's speech in the comments below, but more importantly, what do you think this speech is a play to? What are they posturing? What are they setting up? That was my Biden impression. Roll the teleprompter back. A repeat, end quote, repeat line. What are they setting up? United democracy. Biden impression done. With that said, my freedom-loving friend, for me the most important thing is you and I follow the guidance of our own hearts and our own critical thinking so that we can be more unapologetically free each and every day and not have any tyrants tell us who the threats are and who the good guys are, and not even have me tell you that. I've got my opinion, but more importantly, you have your opinion, and I think it's important that we all use the sovereignty of our own beings to follow our hearts and critically think for ourselves, who are the current threats that we need to protect against, be wary of, not take in their propaganda, and who are the helpful allies. That's something only you can decide for yourself, because during troubling times, we certainly know the devil masquerades as an angel of light. So we've got to be able to distinguish that versus the reality of who really is good, who really is bad. And that isn't something anybody can tell you. That's something you have to decide for yourself. Anything else is potentially deception. With that said, my friend, enjoy pissing on the dreams of tyrants with your liberty. See you soon.